Now, as the country is going digital, each hospital has its own database. And now, at a policy making, at a government level, we also have a national or a provincial data team, which is able to look at holisticity of these records and then come up with some analytics. On a day-to-day basis, this national or provincial team can proactively look at and find out patterns. For example, they might uncover that there is a particular form of fever which is on the rise. But it doesn't stop here. This national and provincial data team would have access to other records from other walks of life as well. For example, they would have access to the pharmaceuticals production rate of a particular medicine which is used for the cure of this particular fever. And combining these two variables, they might come up with something like this. Looking at the pattern of consumption as well as production, they might come up with a certain number in terms of predictive analysis that in given days, this particular medicine would be scarce in the market. And such sort of actionable insight can be fed to the policymakers at a national or a provincial level, could be fed to the bureaucrats or elected personnel who would then take the corrective action. And because these elected personnel have to go back and face the masses, they are always interested in news like these, which can become a soundbite. And since this is so profound, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to talk about this topic of policy making based upon data, and I'll quote you a couple of examples outside of the medical sciences. So let's take the case of the province of Balochistan, Pakistan. This is just a hypothetical example. And let's take into account 3 districts: Chagi, Dera Bhakti and Avaran. Now let's say that the policymakers only have budget for 2 schools for girls, but we have got 3 districts. Now how should that decision be taken? Now without the data points, the decision would be subjective to who is a better representative of its people. But with actionable insights or data, we can make a better policy. For example, from the perspective of data, this would be based on what is the total population of that district, how many girls are under the particular age, what is the current literacy rate, what are your target keeping into consideration World Bank and others, what are the birth rate, and based upon these data metrics, you can now take a decision where the schools have to be constructed. And this is not only limited to schools. You can think of where the next hospital is going to be. You can think of where the road should be carpeted, where the electricity or grid station be installed, and you can think of many other matrices. I'll leave it on to you. Let's consider one other case of policy making based upon data. Let's assume that based upon the digital census and various entities like World Bank and others, you have access to a lot of data points. And we have a hypothetical map of a city of which we have data points like crime, employment, poverty, literacy, and others. And so somebody then comes up and starts inferring between the 2 data points. And so we start with looking at where is the least employment rate in that particular city, and we identify some regions. Simultaneously, the policymakers now would be able to correlate and say they are interested in where is the highest crime rate in that particular city. And all of a sudden, when you correlate these data points, you can see a picture shaping up. So instead of spending a good amount of money on crime, which you must, a focus has to be made on the employment because there is a direct correlation between the 2. And if you add more data points, you might uncover that it has to do with poverty or literacy. The underlying point that I'm trying to make here is that policy making should be done based upon data and actionable insights. And that is why government of technocrats is the future for this country. I'll leave it on to your imagination of what other is possible.